So we've got legendaries that can call lasers from the sky, orbs to your aid, all the way to beams capable of face melting even the most difficult enemies. That is why today we're gonna take a look at even more amazing weapons we can get in Borderlands 4, especially mid to late game. Of course, spoiler warning ahead as we are going to talk about specific boss encounters, but without further ado, let's jump right in. Coming up to number 1, we have the legendary Linebacker shotgun, which we get right here from one of the story bosses called the Sky Spanner Cratch. And this is going to give you yet another legendary Torgue shotgun. They have been pretty much a blast in Borderlands 4, and specifically this is going to launch bouncing projectiles that increase in damage and in radius per bounce. So it's going to pretty much do 5 of these bounces, dealing that extra damage and extra AoE radius as it moves further. But you can actually bounce it on pretty much any surface. So if, for example, an enemy is stuck in a corner, you can use the wall to stack a ton of damage on top of that. But even without it, it actually covers a pretty good range. I absolutely love it. It works really great and the damage stacks really nicely, especially if you go against large groups of enemies. It works decently well against bosses too, but it's mostly going to be reserved to the ground level, so you're not going to have much in terms of enemies that fly away. Otherwise, really solid and it looks really great, so totally get it. Moving on to number 2, we have the legendary Kaoson SMG, coincidentally also part of one of Rafa's strongest builds right now, and you're going to get this as a drop from the final boss at the Ark of Origo on this side of the map. The way this works is pretty much like in the previous Borderlands games, so you're going to have a high rate of fire and shoot a ton of sticky bombs into the target that will explode after a short delay, and in this case, you're even going to get a damage increase for each subsequent explosion, which actually helps it quite a bit. So despite the fact that it's a Vlad-off weapon, it actually functions like a Torgue weapon as well. But guess what? It actually benefits from Vlad-off enhancements, including the ones that have a chance to give it extra projectiles when shooting and even increase its fire rate. You know, the two things that actually make this weapon already pretty much busted. So when you combine this on a character like Rafa and give it just a few enhancements, it's obviously going to become one of the strongest weapons in the game, and especially against boss fights. Maybe not the greatest against group clearing, but definitely boss fights. Now, technically, if you do want a version of this that works against groups of enemies, then you should pay attention to the Wombo Kombo. You can get this from another Ripper drill site here at the Sauce Clanch, further up north in the snowy region. But specifically, this is also going to be a Vlad-off weapon, this time around an assault rifle, and it has a very interesting effect. So every time that you shoot with it, it's also going to shoot rockets, not just bullets. This is what makes it so incredible against group encounters. You're just going to shoot at enemies, you deal that damage, and it also has a lot of splash damage via the rockets. And you're going to have a ton of fire rate with it too, plus extra projectiles if you're going with some Vlad-off enhancements, which is what's going to make this pretty much a staple for a Rafa build at the current stage, especially ones that are going with a lot of splash damage. So give it a go, it's definitely a ton of fun, and once again, a very awesome weapon to have in your arsenal. But let's switch it up a little bit to some extra elemental damage, which is going to bring us to Katagawa's Revenge. Also an Easter egg to Katagawa Jr., another boss encounter we had back in Borderlands 3. You're going to pretty much get this weapon from a story boss repeat on this side of the map, the Driller Hole. It has a chance to actually drop this for you. Now, this is going to be a melee one weapon, but it only comes with 2 ever possible element combinations, fire and shock, and each one of them actually provides a slightly different functionality. So if I were to switch to fire, in this case, as you can see, all of my damage attacks can now have a chance to spawn some of these fiery, let's just call them clouds, that will eventually collapse back onto the ground, dealing extra AoE damage at the enemy's feet. Actually pretty great against large groups of enemies. But there's also a second functionality. If you switch to shock mode, this is going to still spawn some of these clouds, a little bit fewer than before. However, these will linger for longer, dealing extra damage for a longer duration, pretty much zapping the primary target and sometimes also adjacent ones. So it helps a ton with more continuous damage. And because it comes with some Jacob's parts on it, some of these effects can ricochet, so you will see some of these clouds spawning on other targets further away as well, assuming that projectiles reach them. But this is actually pretty strong for any build that actually stacks a lot of elemental damage. So for example, somebody like Harlow can definitely take advantage, especially of the shock mode, to actually deal a ton of extra radiation damage, simply because of how her red tree functions, and especially some of her bonuses provided by the augments in there. So totally give it a try. I think you're going to have quite a bit of fun with it. Now moving on to number 5, the next weapon looks pretty basic, but one of its functionalities goes hard, and that's going to be pretty much a summonable space laser that you can summon in front of you to deal some insane amounts of damage and pretty much melting anything in its range. This is the Oscar mic. I'm pretty sure this is also an Easter egg to Battleborn, one of Gearbox's failed projects from back in, I believe, 2016. So one of the characters over there actually had this power, which was, well, an assault rifle, but he also had the power to summon a space laser from the sky, and this is essentially it. But the damage on it is really crazy, and the space laser has an internal cooldown, so you do have to wait for like 30 seconds or so, give or take, for it to come back online. But it's definitely going to be a boss melter, at least on some of the lower end bosses, not like for the stronger ones, but still very flashy and very fun. So this is actually something that you're going to get by defeating Gen 1 on this side of the map. However, to unlock Gen 1, you're going to first need to start a side mission called Fault Hunting, which you will find right here on this side of the map in the Carcadia Burn at the ruined Sunplants. By the time you reach this part of the main story, you should see it spawning on the map, but it should be right after main story mission number 4 or main story mission number 9. There are two versions of this quest that can actually spawn at both of these stages, both leading to the same boss encounter. Do, however, keep in mind that this is going to be a super rare drop from Gen 1, so you will be stuck over there for quite a little bit. There's also another version of it, as I'm sure you saw dropping, that doesn't give you the laser, but gives you something different, a grenade attachment that works different, but you're going to specifically look out for the one that gives you the space laser for the really cool effect. Moving on to number 6, we have Rainbow Vomit, and during this week you can still guarantee farm it via this week's wildcard mission. However, from this point on, you're going to find it a lot more reliably from Leader Willem, which is actually a boss fight you're going to unlock at the end of a little bit lengthier quest chain. Specifically, it will start with Enter the Electi Part 1 right here at Carcadia, which ends eventually with the Mole's Gambit that brings you to that final boss encounter like I said before. But what makes this weapon so special is that technically it's still a kinetic weapon, but its legendary effect also lets it shoot extra 3 projectiles, which is a random combination of any 3 possible elements in the game. This is what's going to make it so absolutely busted, besides the fact that it's a Jacob's weapon, especially for somebody like Vex. It works excellently with a Bloodletter build right now, so you can stack up a ton of extra damage because it's actually kinetic while still shooting elementals. Besides that, it's going to have a pretty big drop off, which means it's not really precise from far range, but it doesn't really matter. It's a shotgun, so you're going to be close to the enemies anyway. Give it a try, it's absolutely amazing. But moving on to number 7, next one is the BOD, or maybe BOD. Regardless, this is one of the first Daedalus weapons we actually cover in one of these lists, and it's actually also really strong. So this is going to be a drop from right here, the Toil of Spoiling Vis in the main city area. You are going to have to unlock that bunker and defeat the final boss, which is also, I believe, really cool. But the thing about this is that it's more than just your typical shotgun. It can actually come with other firing modes. For example, the one I had here was shotgun and pistol firing mode, but you can also get one with assault rifle firing mode, which is actually going to change it to a lot more precise version of itself. So in this case, high rate of fire, still the same pellet spread, but it's going to be a lot more precise too. But its main advantage is that it's an all-arounder, so it literally counts as a shotgun, assault rifle, sniper rifle, pistol, and SMG, meaning that if you have multiple of those buffs across your gear slots, you're going to actually benefit this weapon no matter what. That is why it's so freaking amazing. And guess what? Even when completing achievements and challenges, this is going to count to all of them at the same time because of the all-arounder perk. In fact, it's even going to give you all of these lines of encouragement, which actually sounds really awesome.
I'm so proud of you.
At number 8, we got the Ohm I Got, which I guess is a play on words on oh my god, but essentially this is going to be a beam shooting SMG, and it's absolutely amazing. So let me show you its functionality and why I think this has the potential of becoming absolutely busted. So this has the energy transfer legendary perk. When energy shield is active, it grants 50% damage by consuming the shield's energy instead of ammo. But when you have over shield, energy shield will not be depleted at all. And now I have a pretty interesting build going for Vex that I haven't covered before, but one that actually gives me constant overshields with one of her legendary, well, in this case class mods, that pretty much guarantees I'm constantly getting that plus 50% extra benefit, but without actually consuming any of my shield at all. So as you would imagine, this can actually become potentially really busted. The only problem is that it seems it only spawns with the shock element, or at the very least the options I got seem to only be that way. I'm going to still hunt for it and hopefully get a better one, but in this case I was in love with the functionality, the fact that we have a beam weapon that can work this well, and I think that if you can actually get a build going with a lot of overshield, you can potentially turn this into something great. And these fights were all filmed on Ultimate Vault Hunter rank 5, by the way, so yeah, again, the damage definitely seems to be there. Now this is going to be a drop from the Moon Maddened Callus, the second version of the boss encounter, and the one that you're going to find on the Elpis Orbital Shatter Field. So pretty much all the way into upper space, you're going to have to make your way at the end and fight the boss encounter once again. If you get it, this is one of the versions that I was able to snatch, but it is going to be a pretty rare drop, so be prepared for that. But let's keep on going to number 9. The next one is going to be the Plasma Coil, and this is another weapon that you get from a boss encounter, a repeatable story boss encounter. This time around, pretty much the last one, so against the Timekeeper. It's going to have a chance to actually drop this for you. And the reason why I say that I am pretty much in love with this weapon is because it comes with the supercharged mechanic on it. So it is a, well, melee weapon, but one that shoots bullets at a very high rate of fire. Now, it only seems to spawn with 2 elements, in this case, either shock or radiation, but I think that it's one of the better melee weapons along the ones that we just covered. It can definitely stack up a lot of damage. That impact is also really great, so if you want element and splash damage, it seems to work great on multiple types of builds. And obviously it also benefits from the throwing dagger, so you can definitely stack that damage even more. Again, I absolutely love this, and the coolest thing about it is the recharge animation, or the reload animation, which is basically another weapon that just drops from, I don't know, the sky, I guess, but it looks pretty nice. And finally, for the last weapon, we have the Hellwakler, which we get from the Meathead Riders here at the Old Scrape, another drill site. So basically bringing us back at the start of the snowy region. This is also going to be a return of a weapon we had at the start of Borderlands 3 that actually carried a lot of us. So this shotgun is actually really strong. For some reason, right now, it's only kinetic damage. It used to be fire, so it used to actually be stronger than this. So maybe that's going to change in the future. But essentially this is pretty much shooting, well, about like 5 bullets in a pentagram sort of shape that you can see if you pay attention to the way they are shot. And it's also going to kind of generate this sort of guitar riff sort of effect when you reload it, or at the end of it. It's kind of hard to notice. It used to be like better in the previous game. So for now, it's actually working really great for any build that takes advantage of kinetic damage. Obviously, with a big pallet count like this, it's going to stack a ton of that, especially for the blood ladder. But obviously, there are other options out there you can go with. For the time being, these are the top 10 weapons I was able to find and have a lot of fun with, at least in the middle to end game, and especially the ones that I tested were on Ultimate Vault Hunter rank 5. However, if there are others that I have missed that we haven't covered before, let me know down below in the comments. Do let me know what other legendary is your favorite. In the meantime, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.